While studying the constructs of human society, we must consider several varying sociological approaches. One such approach is feminism, a macro-scientific perspective which focuses on the status of men and women in society, especially through inequalities within gender. Today, feminism is a prosperous subject. With fourth wave feminism running rampant online and campaigns such as Me Too taking strides for equality, it is undeniable that feminism has a place in modern culture. But to truly understand the complexity of the subject, we must look back to its origins. (1792). Humanity is at the doorstep of the 19th century. Who's that knocking at the door? It's Mary Wollstonecraft, acclaimed writer, philosopher, and women's rights activist. She's just written a book called A Vindication of the Rights of Women, expressing the lapse in women's rights, claiming basic principles of freedom and equality, such as universal education, only extend to men. She compares woman to that of a bird in a cage. Beautiful, adored, trapped. One cannot spread their wings in a cage. These teachings would sow the seeds of change within society. These are the first steps towards equality. Earlier I referred to fourth wave feminism. Naturally, this would indicate that 3 other waves precede it. The first wave of feminism is agreed to have begun at the turn of the 20th century, 100 years after Wollstonecraft. The key focus of the wave was to increase women's political standing within society through campaigns for women's voting rights. The most prolific group in this period were the Suffragettes, a group most commonly associated with getting dirty to get what they want, whether that be protests on the streets or getting thrown in jail. However, these traits are more appropriately associated with another group, the Suffragists. One fact lost to most is that the Suffragettes weren't all good. Yes, they did campaign for women's voting rights, but they only cared for them to be extended to higher class women. It was the suffragists who fought for equality for all, not just the high class. This exclusion of certain groups of women would arise again. But first, the American Civil Rights Movement, contraception, the Second World War. These were few of the many beginnings of the second wave of feminism. When the men left for war, those left behind took the slack. Those people were, of course, women. Many of these women realised they actually quite enjoyed working. So when the men came back to find their once obedient housewives working predominantly male jobs, things weren't looking too hot. Media campaigns of propaganda fuel were the guiding force to getting women back into the kitchen. Housewives were presented as attractive, and the kitchen was presented as a castle. However, women saw this castle as little more than ideological control. Harkening back to Wollstonecraft's writings, women were once again trapped in a distorted cage of masculine control. Connell would argue that these ideals were a clear form of hegemonic masculinity, and Freedom would likely agree. She published The Feminine Mystique, criticizing the mainstream stereotypical image of women for being derogatory. Women would no longer stand down. Marches began, and the second wave struck the world. Or at least a middle-class white world. You see, the first 2 waves had an issue of only focusing on specific groups of women. This is where the third wave of the 1990s hits. Beyond typical middle-class white women, this wave was going to focus more on the universal feminine identity. It was time to redefine femininity. For what does it even mean to be feminine? Better yet, what does it mean to be female? Postmodern feminism challenges early feminism and takes a look at gender and sexuality as more fluid and less fixed than our presumptions may indict. Many would begin to challenge scientific ideals of gender and realize that women cannot be categorized as a collective being. For every single woman encounters discrimination in different forms. Take black women, for example. They not only encounter discrimination for their gender, but their race too. They are fighting a war on 2 fronts, so to speak. Welcome, black feminists, who advocate not only for equality across the genders, but race and class as well. Speaking of class, third world feminists consider the marginalization of women in third world countries who don't have the same basic rights gained through the second or even first waves of feminism yet. From the doorstep of the 19th century to the dawn of the 21st, feminism is still alive. The digital revolution has helped the movement take strides in recent years. The 2010s opened the gate for the fourth wave. The internet allows access to feminism to all institutes, even communities who had little access, such as transgender individuals. Intersectionality and the blended ethos of the online world allows diverse cultures and peoples to stand as one. With platforms like Tumblr and Twitter, movements such as Me Too have given voice to the discriminated against abusers of power. Still, giving a voice to all means everyone can be heard. And history dictates that minorities often have the loudest voice. Radical feminists date as far back as the second wave and go against typical liberal feminist views that men and women should be equal. To them, all men oppress all women. There is no grey in society, only black and white. Misandrists, they would burn bras, advocate lesbianism, and seek a world of separation between the sexes. Social media often allows radical ideals to be the forefront of feminism, even if these beliefs go against the original principles laid out at the birth of the movement. One could argue that we are entering an age where the primary feminist agenda cannot define the movement as it stands today. With so many factions of feminism clinging to the term, it has become more of an umbrella term for a greater canvas of social construct. This canvas continues to grow, and likely will do for years to come.